It's time to start the programs. They start next week on the 19th of November. So in this video, I'm going to run through briefly how to set up some training zones, the basic in and outs of the programs. Next week we have a live question and answer night on next Wednesday, the 22nd of November at 7 p.m. Melbourne time. I'll be there to answer some questions about the program. But I'm going to get into this straight away so we can cover lots of the topics about the programs themselves. So if you haven't already, you can find the training programs on the Bicycle Network website. You can download whichever one you choose. There's a low volume, intermediate volume, or a high volume program. Now the programs are all pretty much the same. The only difference is that weekly volume within each one. So if you download them, you can see the low volume program is about 6 to 15 hours. If you choose the intermediate volume program, it's about 8 to 18 hours. And if you choose the high volume program, it's roughly 10 to 22 hours. So you need to choose the one that's going to suit you. And look, I'd recommend that you have the ability to start on one that you think is achievable. And if you find that you can do more hours during the week, then just trying to make some of the long rides longer if you can. And look at the intermediate or the high volume program and see how many hours are prescribed there and try and match up with that. But I think the rule should be to do as much as you can, but still keep in mind you want to follow the periodization. So over a 3-week build, you do a little bit more each week is the key. And look, the best way to keep track of that is to potentially download the programs off Training Peaks, because the Training Peaks program allows you to have all of the sessions in the Training Peaks calendar, and from there when you upload your Garmin files after each ride, or just your head units if you use a Wahoo, then you'll be able to keep track of how many hours you're actually doing, which is a great way. So there's 3 programs available, the same ones in Training Peaks. You just go to the store where you can buy them. If you type in Peaks Challenge Falls Creek, the 3 programs should come up. Once you've downloaded the program into your Training Peaks account, you should have it within your plans over on the left hand side, and it's pretty easy to apply. The only thing you've got to make sure is that you apply it on the right date. So I've got an athlete here that I just call Program Builder for when I make some programs. If you want to apply it, you just select where you want it to go. So for me, I've got to choose someone because I've got lots of people in mind. Program Builder, there it is. Now, here's the key. You've got to start it on the right date so it finishes on the right date. So all the programs for Peaks Challenge are starting on the 19th of November, which isn't far away. Plug in that 19th, hit apply, confirm that. And then it should all tabulate in there. So I hit OK, and there it is. So it's all there. So the Training Peaks way is great because you can see how many hours, how much TSS, which is the stress score if you're using a heart rate monitor or a power meter, they'll all go in. And you have the ability to potentially swap those days around. And look, this is a great time now to talk about how to set up your week so that it's going to work for you. The setup that I have in there might not necessarily coincide with days you've got to work or days off. You've got the capacity to change the weekly setup around as long as you be smart about it. So if you want to need a day off on, say, Thursday, and you can ride on Wednesday, all you got to do is drop and drag them to swap them around. Pretty easy. If you've got more time to ride on Sunday and you want to go out for a longer ride, all you got to do is go in and you can change it to something like 3 hours or 4 hours if you want to. And then when you hit save, it'll stay the same, so I left it as 2. But you want to see if you're doing 9 hours, you want the next week to be a little bit more and the next week to be a little bit more, so that when you get down to that recovery week, you've earned it, and that recovery week has to be less than what the other 3 were. So you actually do get some recovery and your adaptation, and then your next block starts and you're ready to go for that. So for the programs to work, you need to know what either your threshold heart rate is or what your threshold power is. All of the program sessions are based around a percentage of your FTP. If you don't know what your FTP heart rate or FTP power is, on day one of the program there's a 20-minute test. That should give you a pretty good idea of where it is. That's well explained. If you want to set things up in training peaks, you've got to make sure that your zones are in correctly in training peaks with your heart rate and your threshold in there. And to do that, you just go up to your settings and you go to your zones and you can pop them in here. Now, there's a couple of tricks to this. Say this is just for me. My threshold heart rate is 178. Your maximum doesn't matter too much, but mine's about 193. And my resting is down at about 40. Now, here's the key part. You need to choose the training zones that I've got matched up within the program the way I describe them. So for that, you've got to choose lactate threshold, and the one I use is the Andy Coggan 5 training zone method. So you do that, you hit calculate, you hit apply, and then there's your heart rate ones. There's 5 heart rate training zones. And your threshold heart rate should sit about in the middle of zone 4 is where it should be. Same for threshold power. Mine is 340. I change it to threshold power. We choose Andy Coggan. We go calculate. And there they are, they're ready to go. So all the heart rate zones also match up with what I've prescribed within the PDF version on the Bicycle Network website. So if you go down to training and heart rate, it's pretty well outlined. If you don't want to use training peaks, all you got to do is refer back to this little training zones guide, print it out, stick it on the fridge, which I'd suggest you also do for all of the weeks set up, to the 16 weeks set up leading up to the event. The first month of the program is all about Z2 work, so zone 2, lots of aerobic work to build up your aerobic engine. The first phase has got lots of strength efforts in it to get some power in the legs through that without really doing too much intensity. You can load the legs up really well with a moderate intensity effort, but using a really big gear. Let's look at the first weekend's strength session. If you open that session up, and remember you can also download this on your phone, so you've got it for quick reference. If you're out on the bike and you forgot what you were supposed to do, you can just look it up, have a quick look at the main set and the description and see what it is. So for this, I've prescribed 3 to 5 8-minute efforts at 50 to 60 RPM. And there's a bit of terminology going on here. The SEs is a strength effort or strength endurance effort. That's just there, hopefully, and this is what I'll run through in some of the live Facebook live talks. If you are confused about the terminology, just hit me up with a question. But a lot of it is hopefully self-explanatory. So SE should be relatively solid. It's a moderate intensity. It's about start at 85% if you like of your FTP. It could be about 100 if you find that you're already pretty strong and can handle it. So you want to do somewhere between 3 to 5 efforts in total. If you can only get through 3 before you start moving around on the bike and the power's really starting to drop, then just do 3 of them. But if you find you can get through all 5, piece of cake, then aim for 5. If you're getting through all 5 piece of cake, then you may be wanting to think about either dropping your cadence a little bit or even lifting your power a little bit. Maybe you've got your FTP set a little bit too low in training peaks. Okay, I think that's about it, other than just a quick run through as to what's coming up in the first 3 weeks. So I believe this was the intermediate program. We've got 9 and then 10 and a quarter and then 11 and a half hours total. The weeks are set up pretty simple for the intermediate. It's Mondays off and then we train 6 days in the week. Fridays is usually always a recovery day. Keep it nice and easy. Those Rico days can be less. If you're on the ergo a lot of the time, just remember, if you are going to do, say, the weekend version, which is 3 hours 30, I would probably recommend to not do 3.5 hours on an indoor trainer. It puts a lot more stress on the body than just going out and doing 3.5 hours on the road. I would probably suggest, if anything, I usually just say halve it and get the main set done. And then maybe do a nice steady aerobic, 10, 20 minutes at the start, and do the same at the end of the main set. And same goes for the midweek rides. At this stage, they're all only an hour long. That should be fine if you are on an ergo. Okay, I think that's about it. Next, I'll just run through some of the training rides that are coming up in the next few weeks, and I'll close from there. Okay, so I hope that guided you through how the programs work, how to set things up so everything runs smoothly over the next 16 weeks. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight into how Training Peaks works and potentially using that option. Now remember, there are still some Bicycle Network training rides coming up. The next ones are on the 24th and the 25th of November. Cycling Maven, or aka just Mave these days, is running one next weekend in the Dandenongs from Melbourne if you're based in Melbourne. Tim is running one in Adelaide on the 24th, and then there's a 25th training ride as well. So good luck for the start of the training program on Monday the 19th. I hope it all goes well. Remember, it's all about consistency. Just try and get as much done as you can, as regularly as you can. Always look ahead a couple of weeks in the program to see what's coming up. You don't want to cook yourself in week 1 so that week 2 and 3 you're missing sessions already. So do what you can to organise the program to work for you. And I'm sure next time I talk to you, you'll be well into it, hopefully enjoying it. Have lots of questions for the live question and answer next Wednesday. And if there's anything else I haven't covered in the videos, I'm sure we'll cover them then.